I've now got most of the concrete that's over the top of the toilet flange out of the way, chiseled it out. I've got the lead exposed, and I'm going to use just a drill with a small bit, usually 3/16, quarter inch, somewhere in that size range works. You want the drill bit narrow enough that it will fit between the cast iron pipe and the flange. So you can drill this ring of lead out. And I just drill a bunch of holes all in a series all the way around. Lead comes out pretty cleanly usually. Needle nose pliers, a screwdriver, usually a flat bladed screwdriver that you can get in there like a chisel. This one is actually designed to hammer on. It's got that head on the back. This particular one's made by DeWalt. I know Stanley's made them in the past. And then obviously a hammer. So this can be kind of tedious. If you notice, I did put a rag, stuffed a couple rags down here in the pipe itself. That keeps concrete and lead and just whatever from falling down the drain. And I don't have to go fish it out as far later on and get my hand down in there, which I prefer not to. It's not the end of the world, but a couple rags makes it easy. So well, that didn't work so well. So that actually busted the drill bit. So I will grab some new drill bits and we will be back. Well, let's try that again. New drill bit. This one's a little bit larger diameter. Once you get through the lead, it's pretty obvious because then you'll hit the oakum, which is basically just kind of a, looks like old style rope. There's some of it here. Just kind of a brown fibrous material. And they would pack strips of that or rings of that in between the flanged fitting and the pipe. And then they would pack that in and then they would place the lead around it. So like I said, you can feel when it goes through. Just stop at that point. So I've now removed all the lead. As you can see, there's a gap down there. And it goes down probably about the thickness, let's say close to 1.5 inches is how much lead they actually put in there. And that's what actually sealed these joints in the old days. And nowadays too, I guess. As long as these fittings are intact, that joint was filled with lead and it was caulked in, which meant that they had a steel tool that basically followed that curvature there. And when the lead was still pretty hot, but kind of starting to solidify, they would hammer down and caulk the joint, which was basically forcing the lead into the texture on the inside of the fitting and the outside of the pipe. So that was a caulked joint. So I think I've got some old caulking irons somewhere. I'll put a picture in if I do have them. But that's it. So now I'm going to fish some of that oakum out of there, and we'll pull that out. And hypothetically, that closet flange should be free, but being that it's been placed into concrete, I'll probably have to hammer on it a bit to get it to loosen up, but it should slide straight up off that pipe. We've now got most of the concrete, most of the lead, and the oakum out of the joint around this old flange. And it's pretty well locked in there because of the amount of concrete that it's been placed into. So I am going to use a cold chisel and a small sledgehammer or single jack, and I will see if I can't crack this flange and possibly pull it out in some pieces. So we will give that a try and see what we get. Either way, this is a toilet flange that does not want to come out easily. It's going to be a fight. All right, so after a whole lot of chiseling with the roto hammer and hitting this cast iron flange with a cold chisel and sledgehammer, off film, sorry, I was actually able to get it to crack and split here. I've actually chiseled far enough through on this side and over on this side to be through the slab, which gives it enough relief so that it'll actually break free. So what I think I'll do is I'll try and crack it over on this side so it's cracked in one piece over here and one piece over here, and see if we can't pry it up and out of there. So let's give it a try. All right, yeah, it's broken right here and broken here. So let's see if we can't pry this up and out. Here we go. Awesome. Yay! There's one piece, and hopefully this one will come out. Shouldn't be much holding it. It is a little bit confined in how it's been cast into the concrete, so it doesn't just slide right up and out super easily. But there is what's left. So now we have the pipe coming up. We've got our new bolt-on flange, which will slide down like so. We'll have to slide it down a little bit further. And I'm not sure, but I think I will have to relieve some of the concrete right here and right here, and then we'll clean this up. And I've got some filler that we'll put in there, and also up we'll clean underneath the slab, clean off the, or underneath this linoleum we'll clean off these loose pieces and fill under there so we don't get these voids around the perimeter, and we'll go from there. So let's bust some of this concrete out. For this next part, I'm just going to use some floor patching compound. This particular stuff is a fast-setting deep patch, so that means it can go up to 1.5 inches per lift of thickness in material. So I've got a pretty good void around here, and I just don't want big voids underneath everything down under a floor. So I'm just going to mix it up. I've got my nice red can Folgers. There's a mixing container. I'm gonna mix it kind of thin, pour it in a fluid consistency, get the bulk of that hole filled up, and then I'll set my flange on top, throw a plug in the pipe after I vacuum and carefully pull that rag out so we don't get a bunch of debris down there. And then I will probably carefully funnel it through somewhere, a void in the side, to kind of top it off and bed that flange down in there again. So open this up. This is just kind of a masonry product. The bag tears quite easily, obviously. Much more than I was expecting. So I'll just pour some of this in here. My experience with this kind of material, any type of mixed material, whether it's hot mud for drywall or some kind of masonry patching, grout, mortar, or something, don't mix too much or attempt to mix too much because it gets really tough to do. It's easier to do smaller batches and do multiples. So I got a sink right here, off camera. So I've mixed up my first batch here, and it's fairly soupy. It's quasi self-leveling. So, and just start kind of pouring it in. Move it around, get my head in the way. Got a little on top, that's not too bad. Just kind of go around. This is basically like vibrating or rotting the mix. Get it down in there, lock it in. Already feels like it's getting a little bit stiffer. So this next part, like I said, we're going to put this flange on here, and I attach my bolts to these ears on both sides, not these slots. These slots tend to break pretty easily and snap off. So I'm gonna start kind of crimping this down a little bit just to hold it in place, and that way I will bring it up to level, and I'll also measure off my back wall so I know that I'm parallel to my back wall. So right now I'm at about, I'd say about 13 7/16 and 13 3/16, 13 1/8. So obviously I gotta rotate like that. So about 13 3/8 and 13 1/4. Double check that, 13 1/4. That's pretty close. So I am gonna get one of my little pry bars here, which I set back behind me. I'm gonna lift it up, kind of. Maybe it's not going to lift up so easily. Right about there. (13 3/16). Just a smidge more. That's probably too much of a smidge. 13 3/8, 13 1/4. Right, close enough. Just check where we're at here. So that right there, maybe just all right, I'd say that's about good. So I'll mix up more material. I will fill in along this groove. I will probably mix it much more fluid so it flows in there a lot better. More of a liquid than a paste or putty. And we'll kind of get that bedded in there a little bit better. Give myself a little pour spout, and away we go. All right, I think I'll mix up just a little bit more of this and we'll call it good. Okay, I think I've got it pretty well filled up all the way around.